Grandmaster Awonder Liang takes on Magnus Carlsen at the 6th round of the Grenke Chess 2025. We are in to the second half of the tournament. There you see Awonder writing the score sheet. Magnus waits to shake hands, finally takes his share as Awonder is completely focused there. Both the players write down their score sheets. Awonder actually shifted from the classical tournament to, oh, there they have the handshake, to the freestyle one. After 4 rounds, he was on 3.5 out of 4 and then won his 5th round here. Magnus there removes all his pieces. He's on 5 out of 5. He's playing sublime chess here, just like what we are used to seeing him play. The players now will be given a position which they will have to set up. You can see Awonder, actually his decision to shift from freestyle, from open to freestyle here has borne rich dividends as he manages to face Magnus. I think playing against Magnus is one of the main aims for many people coming to Grenke, because it's not usual that you get to play against the greatest player on the planet every now and then. The players have kept their pieces. Now it's time for them to start thinking about what to do in this new setup. And Magnus is a little bit confused there about what's going on, and it's time to start a handshake. And let's have a look at the pieces: knight, bishop, rook, king, rook, knight, bishop, queen. This is what we have as the starting position, and the knight comes out to b3. So the knight here is aiming to enter the position to c5 and a5, but Magnus goes c6. Very interesting. See, imagine a move like knight c5. You can already long castle and defend this pawn. That's very nice. He goes pawn to c3, opening up the bishop. Now remember, it's all about keeping your pieces active in freestyle chess. None of your pieces should get passive. That's very important. Magnus goes g6. He opens up the queen's position here. And Awonder plays his pawn to e4. He's gaining some space in the center, also activating his rook. The knight is also well placed. Pawn to e5 played by black. And here white long castles in the position. Maybe later you want to play d4. That's a very interesting idea. Now how does Magnus continue? It's interesting to see how he places his pieces. He also long castles. He used his king to move the rook away and then put his king on c8. And for Awonder now, the question is, how does he activate his bishop and queen? He says, well, I'm just playing in the center. He pushes his pawn to d4. While white has a very strong center now, black position is not so bad. Because, whoa, Awonder removes his jacket there. It gets a bit hot in there, of course, with so many players. Takes on d4, and now I believe he'll take back with the pawn. C takes d4, maybe not the best move. Knight takes might have been better, but if you think about what normal classical chess stands for, a strong center is often very good. But in freestyle chess, it's not always the case. Because a strong center gives you control, but what if your pieces are already active? Look at this bishop here, and now look at Magnus's move, f5. What a beautiful move. He activates the bishop like this. And you start to understand that here Black's pieces are not at all passive, even though white has a strong center. Now Awonder tries to stabilize things in the center by pushing his pawn, limiting the queen, but in doing so, he has given up many squares. Magnus plays knight e6, and this is a beautiful move. This is a beautiful move here because he wants to push d6, but the knight is now controlling these squares, especially stopping f4. h3 was played by Awonder. Now I had a beautiful line. If you go g3, d6 and f4, I simply chop and the queen is trapped. that's how tricky this can be. Anyway, h3 played here by Awonder, and I guess Magnus would want to break in the center with d6. This is beautiful move because it activates the queen and also the bishop. Bishop comes to h2. Now the bishop on h2 is pretty well positioned, but what is going to happen next is that after takes, you will realize that the knight is beautifully placed on e6, blockading the passer. By the way, whether to take with the pawn or the bishop is the question. I think he'll take with the bishop here, mainly because he doesn't want a passive bishop on h2. So take. And now if you take rook takes e5, then there is rook takes d4. That could be very powerful with the e5 rook hanging. So he took back with the pawn, and there you see the knight is a great blockader. If only the bishop was on d5, that would have been a perfect setup. Magnus first chops off on d1, and Liang has to take with the king, because if he takes with the rook, he loses the e5 pawn. So king takes on d1, and now knight to b6 played. You go queen h2 here. And pawn comes up to h5. Now with this move, pawn to h5 played here. White moves queen to g3. Trying to clamp down the position. Bishop comes up to f7 to protect this pawn here. And then pawn to h4 played. Magnus gives a check. You'll see that slowly and steadily he's improving his position bit by bit. The rook comes in to give a check. Awonder has to move his king. Maybe king c1 is what he can do here. And yes, he plays king to c1. It's time to activate the queen somehow here. Maybe queen h6 check. Maybe queen f8. He plays knight c4. The knight is very actively positioned here. He's looking at this direction. It does look a little bit in the air, but who's going to attack it? Bishop c2 played. And maybe Magnus is coming up with the rook now. Rook to d5. Threatening knight takes e5, rook takes e5. It's a very strong move. And Awonder comes with his queen to c3. Well, if he had played f4 here, then after queen h6, this would have been difficult to defend. So queen c3, and Magnus takes rook takes e5. So there's no time to take the knight because e1 is hanging. And now knight to e3 played. He plays knight to c7. Very interesting move here by Magnus. This is a very deep play by him. He's defending the knight with his bishop. Yes, this pin is slightly irritating, but you get rid of it now. Rook takes e1. Queen takes e1. And bishop takes c4. So slowly and steadily black is putting more and more pressure on the position. Queen to e3 played. b6. Now the queen is actually limited a bit here, but knight d4 can be a good idea to bring the knight into the game. Awonder is fighting hard in this position, not letting it easy for Magnus. Attacking the c6 pawn, the queen comes to f6, defending c6. And now a3 would be a useful move to make, but he goes knight f3. And isn't this just giving up the pawn here, because b3 would be met with check? Not be so easy to handle. Magnus taking his time here, because this could be a very important moment. He could just win a pawn. And he takes it. Bishop takes a2, and Awonder didn't respond instantly, which means that perhaps he underestimated this move. Queen e5 played. Aha, that was the point. You want to exchange queens, knight e5, and then win the pawn on g6. But now Magnus has this powerful move, queen f7, and he finds it so that b3 no longer is possible. It's very strong. Queen to d6 played, and the queen is very actively placed here, attacking here, threatening knight e5. But Magnus comes in with a counter attack now. You see, at the right time you have to mix between defense and attack, and Magnus is doing perfectly, threatening bishop b3. So he takes the pawn. And his point, of course, is that if bishop b3, there is queen f5 check. So queen f1 check, bishop d1. And now bishop b3 should do the trick here, because after queen f5, king b7, it's very difficult for the queen to somehow defend this bishop here. Maybe queen d7 to defend the bishop. Finds bishop b3, Magnus. You can bank on him to keep finding one good move after another. Just a machine. Just a machine. But let's analyze now. Queen f5, not king b7 because of queen d7, but knight e6. And there's no square here, and it's actually over. No more checks as well. So, yeah, this is done. Bishop b3. Awonder resigns. Magnus wins it, and he now moves to 6 out of 6. A fantastic game, I must say, by Magnus. Awonder tried to stick to classical principles by building a strong center and so on, but Magnus understood the value and the use of the pieces much better, and this is what freestyle chess is all about. It is about learning new things, but it is also unlearning what you have learnt in normal classical chess, because a strong center need not always mean a better position here, and Magnus Carlsen proved it beautifully in this game. He's now the sole leader by half a point on 6 out of 6.